you don't go into the house and ask the realtor, you know what? I just want to rent. So would the owners be interested in renting? Now you can if you've done a ton of research and you know that that's kind of an appetite, but you don't go in saying, hey, I know that you did all of this work to sell this house, but I don't want to buy it. I want to rent it. And they're like, literally, that's not what we're doing today.
Something's shifting in the nonprofit sector. Experienced professionals are done waiting for permission, and they're building consulting businesses that pay them what they're worth on their terms. This is Fracture, the podcast about the business of nonprofit fractional consulting for consultants and the people who are about to become one. I'm Cindy Wagman, founder of the Nonprofit Fractionals Network. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are going behind the scenes with someone who has been doing this work as a fractional and who can really share what's working and what's not practically, which I know y'all love to listen to. And she's been a guest or speaker at my summit. So I cannot wait to, reintroduce you all to Tanya Frey. Tanya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I'm really excited to sit down and chat with you. I've been such a fan of yours. First, when I first came out and launched, finding your little section of the LinkedIn world, it totally changed how it changed how I approached this entire thing. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so lovely to hear.
Yeah.
So I always like to start with, tell us who you are and how you ended up doing the work that you're doing. And what is it that you do exactly? So let's start there.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I am a recovering attorney. I've been practicing law for 21 years, and my area has always been employment, HR, anything that has to do with building teams, what goes wrong when organizations are run by humans, which is how we live.
A lot and all the time. Yeah.
Right. And so, I've been in the nonprofit space for the bulk of my career. And, I took an opportunity to just really step back in the fall of 24 and think about what I wanted to do next, how I wanted that to look, and what it was going to take to get there. I had no idea that I was going to be, launching a firm. That wasn't the plan, right? I wanted to just step out of the nonprofit corporate space and really to rest, figure out what was next. I was on a sabbatical that I called it a sabbatical because I I didn't know how long it was going to be. I just knew that I was ready to bet on myself. And so I took those 4 months and I really just did some deep reflection and just truly traveled and paid attention to what nonprofits were telling me. So I didn't set out to launch a search firm. I set out to figure out what was keeping up nonprofits up at night and finding out what their most challenging, difficult obstacles were, and then figuring out how to, build around that. So that's what I ended up doing. And I launched Terra Firma Consulting. And my goal when I launched in December of 24, my goal was to help nonprofits recruit, retain, and train. But as I've evolved, and I tell people constantly, allow the market to tell you what it needs, and don't hold fast all the time to what you think it needs. Right? Do that data and do that research. But we're positioning ourselves as a decision-making firm. Like, we help nonprofits make tough decisions, whether that's recruiting, retaining someone, getting nonprofits better at what they're doing. Um, and then the unfortunate situation of, you know, separating from employees and saying goodbye to board members sometimes, right? So we are there when the hardest decisions have to get made.
Literally, those are the hardest decisions. I will say, um, the hardest experience of my professional career was firing someone that was amazing and who I cared a lot
Yeah,
about, and
that's
just
right.
things were going in a different direction, and it was and remains the hardest thing I've ever done
It
professionally.
is.
So,
It
yeah.
is. And sometimes it feels like it's harder in nonprofit because people are there for the mission. And, those conversations can be the toughest because people are so opted in, and they're not there for
Yeah.
stakeholders, right? They're not there for, making people billionaires. They're really there to provide direct services at
Mm,
times. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So how do you structure your offerings? Like we talk about fractional. Is all your work fractional? Do you have other types of services?
Mhm.
How does the business side work?
It has had several iterations. And I
Yeah.
think, when you first start out, you have absolutely no idea. Well, at least I didn't. I wasn't sure how to package anything. I
Mm,
was doing a lot of YouTubing, a lot of, asking chat, because people don't really talk about that, particularly actual numbers. And I didn't have a network. And so
mm,
that's what I really loved about finding your piece of the internet, because having people to bounce things off of really was helpful. Um, as an attorney, I was used to billing before I went in house hourly. Everybody was like, that's a no. Do not do that. Do not go hourly. People aren't paying. And someone here in town said, people aren't paying for your hour. They're paying for the 20 years of experience that go into you being able to solve the problem in an hour. Wow. So I was like, not going to charge by the hour. I'm going to charge by the decade. No. Um,
yeah.
so, my offerings, have changed. When I first
Mm,
started out, my first client was an executive search client, and I did a flat fee. I wasn't exactly sure. I knew that there was some standard market rates, but as we evolved and as I emerged into an HR sort of like decision firm, I started looking at it from not necessarily how many hours we're going to spend on this, but I used to tease and say it's almost like daycare. Like I'm paying for the spot, not going to necessarily use it every single day, but I'm paying for the spot. I'm paying for you to be my service provider.
mm,
So I moved into sort of project based, and helping other fractional folks get roles has been so great because I can
mm,
help be an ambassador for them when they're in the middle of a big project, right? They're in the middle of helping a company or an organization, a nonprofit get to where they need to be. They don't always have the time to do that marketing, do that business development. I have a nonprofit that needs fractional CHRO. So I reach out to my network, my network's network. I do all of my good publicity and I get the candidates that I think would fit. So, you know, I advise them and I encourage them and I say, charge monthly, charge weekly. Here are the hours that you're going to say that you can provide the help. If it's 10 to 15, if it's 8, think about it in terms of days. I'm going to be available to you 2 days a week. Here's here's what I'm charging you to be this resource for you per week. Let's see what the market can bear. I've talked to people in Chicago and Atlanta and right here in Memphis. And that can vary. But with real numbers, I'll tell you, I just placed a fractional general counsel, and it was a really good fit. They basically were describing her in the post, and I like zeroed in and went straight to my phone, and I'm like, I found something. This is going to be awesome. You're going to be great. And within 7 days, I'm not bragging, but I am bragging. Within 7 days, they had an offer on the table. Now, as her sort of advocate, that kind of came differently, right? But as her advocate, I said, give them the days that you'll be available, um, and package it in. I'm the resource up to this many hours, and then let's say anything over 60 to 80 hours, we're going to charge a premium fee. It helps people, figure out what's really important.
Yeah.
That's a tip that came from a divorce attorney who said, if you charge premium hours after 5 and on the weekends, people think twice before they pick up the phone and call you. So, but the hourly is not a great use of our talent and time. And so I always encourage a package deal of X thousands of dollars a week, or we can do, $8,500 a month, whatever you have deemed to be sort of what you need in terms of your anchor client to be.
Yeah. And you kind of said at the beginning, like, figure out what the market needs and will bear, right?
Yep.
Okay. One of the
and
things.
then increase it by 10%.
Yeah. Seriously, people always do
yes.
the calculations wrong, where they're
Yes.
like, okay, if I was in-house making $100,000 a year,
Oh my gosh, no, don't do
this would
that.
be my hourly rate. Therefore, my
Nope.
daily rate. It's not.
That's right.
It's not it. Yeah.
That's not it. Yeah.
Okay. I would love to talk, because you have this unique perspective from where you're sitting, where you're doing this work, but also you are
Yes.
bringing in fractionals to organizations. One thing I see people who are looking for fractional work do or think about is like, oh, there's a job posting for my function. Should I just apply to it and try and convince them to hire me fractionally? And I will hold off sharing my perspective until I hear yours.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear your kind of advice or experience with this idea of if an organization's looking for X, or there's a job, specifically like an open job posting, what should a fractional do?
Yeah. So let me ask this. Is the open job posting for like a full-time role?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's how I think about that. There are tons of houses for sale in America right now. I'm sure there are tons in Canada.
There are. Yeah.
You don't go into the house and ask the realtor, you know what? I just want to rent. So would the owners be interested in renting? Now you can, if you've done a ton of research and you know that that's kind of an appetite, but you don't go in saying, hey, I know that you did all of this work to sell this house, but I don't want to buy it. I want to rent it. And they're like, literally, that's not what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Right. And so, same, if there's a job posting and it's asking for one thing and you go in and you're saying, oh, but let me give you this new awesome idea, they're not going to necessarily be very receptive to that. It's almost like before the job posting, you have to have that conversation and see if people are open to. I have not found yet, please correct me if I'm wrong, listeners of Fracture, I have not found yet that that's the way to do it. I talk a lot with nonprofit organizations who are convinced that they know, and that's fine. Let's keep talking. Let's see what the market says, and then let's make a decision. So if they're wanting 15 applicants, 26 candidates by this Friday, they don't want 26 applicants that don't fit what they have asked for. And so, they're going to do, they're going to be like, oh, well, this person says they want to be here part-time. Okay, thanks. And that's how they think about it, right? A fractional candidate, a fractional executive is not applying for a role and saying, I only want to be there, a couple days a week and I'm going to do all this work you've described in this amount of time. They are coming from this is a business model. They are coming from a totally different mindset. It's a growth mindset that nonprofit organizations have to buy into before you try to sell yourself. That is half the battle.
Yeah, exactly what
Yeah.
I've experienced.
Yeah.
I love the analogy of the renting versus buying.
Yeah.
That's so accurate. Like I just
Yeah.
think now, if an organization's posted the same job 3 times in 1 year,
Hey, if that house is empty and it's been on the market for 200 days, you might be ready for a
renting. Yeah.
And then I want to know why. Like, what is in your walls?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. You're like, did someone die here? You're
Yeah.
like,
was a dead animal stuck in a wall?
Right.
Yeah. With like unknown smell. Yeah. No, I mean, yes. So I would 100% agree. That's been my experience. I never recommend applying for jobs unless, again, like that it's been something that's been an issue for them. This is so fun because there's like all these scenarios that come up that I feel like we can like stress test here. So another thing that comes up for folks is they'll see, because I feel like now the pendulum hasn't swung the other way, but fractional is definitely becoming more popular. And organizations like, oh, we can save money or we can do this. Why wouldn't we want it? So I see a lot of like RFPs or things for fractional where it's like the organization's looking for something, they're calling it fractional, but it's not aligned. So they're posting how many hours, or like, I don't even recommend people do days. Like I'm just like, your monthly retainer is a flat fee and you're not counting hours. But so there's all these people who are like, oh, I need a fractional. And then what they describe might not be fractional. So I would love to hear your advice for people on how to navigate that kind of like, how can we get is there a way to sort of come to the table get on the same page, or is that also a waste of time?
So I get to work with nonprofit organizations in this space, and actually I love that I get to educate them more and more about what it is and what it's not. I started out when I launched Terra Firma telling people what it was not going to do. Right? It's almost as important. And people say, well, you should take things that come through the door. Don't tell people what you're not going to do. Fair. If revenue is a challenge, great, take things that come through the door. As I tell young attorneys, cut your teeth on some stuff and skin your elbows on things, but nothing that's so outside of the bounds of what you do that you don't feel like an expert in that field, or you feel like you can't do that. That's malpractice in my world. So don't do that. But be very careful about, your boundaries and not running into a situation where you're hired at a lower cost to them because they're already not paying you benefits because it's not a full-time employee. They're not bringing you on as part of their head count, which if you have worked in a corporate space, nonprofit, large organizations, you know that head count is so sacred. You are giving them what they're asking for without them having to pay those pesky taxes. And so you're giving them a gift. You have room to set your boundaries. Isn't that why you started doing this in the first place? So that said, I tell organizations, they have terms. Fractional executives are going to have terms because they are in high demand. So you're going to have to bend as much as they are, right? This is a compromise. Both of you are not going to come out of it like 100%. Oh, we got exactly what we wanted. That's not a compromise. But you're gonna need to remember, is this a buyer's market? Is this an employer's market? Is this an employee's market right now? Doesn't matter, because if it's an employer market, then fractional is not going to be the way to go, right? But if you are open to this idea, be open to all of it. And people, I get really tired when people say, I'm a fractional executive now. And I'm like, are you though? Like, why do you think that? It's not like, I don't know. People say, well, if you're a writer, you just have to start writing and tell people you're a writer. And I'm like, there's some writers out there who are like, sis, you are not a writer. Like, you have written some things, but you are not a writer. I feel like that with fractional executives, you want to explain to the nonprofit, hey, they're going to come at you with their own business model. You are looking at their terms and you're going to agree or not agree. And if that's not what you want, don't waste their time. And so I try to coach them in that space and say, don't say, well, it has to be Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 8 to 4. Like, that's not exactly what we're saying here. We're saying that they have their expertise. They're going to come alongside you and be your CFO for a time period to help you solve the problems that you weren't able to solve. But they're not going to necessarily do it Mondays and Thursdays, because that's not how they operate. If you lay it out and say, we really need someone to sit in on our senior leadership calls on these days. Great. Okay. That's part of the term.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I tend to coach nonprofits a ton on that. And I have you to thank for being able to tell them seriously what it is and what it's not. So, because it's trendy,
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I see people, they're just like, start calling themselves fractional. Yeah. Without really thinking about or thinking that will just make getting clients easier, which also was not true.
No.
Okay. I'm excited to ask you this question.
Okay.
So as someone who does bring in fractionals to organization through a recruitment process, and we've just talked about, not everyone who uses the word fractional is really a fractional. What are some red flags or things where if you're screening someone for a fractional role, you're like, you're not fractional, or you know what, you just are not, you don't get it. Yeah.
I'm glad you asked that question because I'm ready. I have a friend that calls it the 501c. It's like, yes, that's what it is over here. It's 501c3s in Memphis in the United States. Yeah. It sometimes just happens when I'm sitting on a screening and I'm chatting with them and I want to, say, well, what's your area of expertise? And they don't have one. They sort of go along with what you say you need. And they're like, oh yeah, I can do that. And you're like, but what is it that you do? Like, what is your area of expertise?
Yeah.
Well, I have done HRIS, I've done benefits, I've done administrative, I've done this, I've done that. And it's like, what do you, and it's so hard because I'm a pretty decent interviewer. And so when I'm asking people questions, they're kind of reading me, like trying to they want me to telegraph the answer. And I'm like, no, tell me what your practice is. Like, it's like a practice area. Like, what is your area? So if they can't give you their spiel, if they can't tell you what they are, I come in, I sit down, and this is my area. Number two, and I have done this myself because I was being asked to, I served as a fractional COO in preparation for the CHRO to come in, because that wasn't her area. Her area was not COO work. Well, mine is. And so I described creating processes and systems, taking assessment, but I knew where my expertise ended and where hers was going to begin. And so when I sat down and asked, hey, fractional CHRO, what do you envision doing? And she said, I'm going to tell you this. I am not going to be looking at contracts. I'm not going to be doing this or whatever. And I said, thank you. Like, give me your boundaries. I said, tell me how you know when you sit down what to do. She's like, the first thing I do is and she talked about assessments and she talked about stakeholder meetings. So not only is this not your area because you can't tell me what you do, but you can't tell me what your first 2 weeks are going to look like. I need you to come in and tell me how you're going to assess what we need done. Because we think we know, but you've
You
done
never
this
do.
so much that you know, right? You're going to listen to us, but we're going to give you a medical history and you're going to diagnose. So I need to know what your first 2 weeks are going to look like in order to understand you get this. You understand, you know what this is. If people start saying things like, well, I have a big travel month. I've got a vacation coming up. I'm probably going to need to ask off for that. I'm like, you don't work as an employee. You are presenting your expertise. And so I'm not available
Yeah.
is your
Don't care. Yeah, like
unavailability.
just be
Right.
like, yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah. You don't
And
need to
so
ask permission to take your
that's right.
time. Yeah.
Right. And so I
Yeah.
think it's courtesy, right? You know, I'm unavailable from this and that. And then having more than one running at a time, if there are more than two, and challenge me on this, it, it, multiple engagements, there's a threshold, there's a limit for that, I believe, because with too many, um, it can stress you out and they're not projects. So having multiple where they're like, oh yeah, I've got, 7 or 8 clients right now. And I'm like,
How?
how?
Like, how does that work? Yeah.
What are you doing? Yeah.
Like having coached over 100 fractionals and seen how they like put in the time. I'd say like 3 is full-time
Yes,
work.
that's right.
There are people, the more specialized you are, you
Mm-hmm,
can
mm-hmm,
maybe get to 4 or 5.
mm-hmm,
So I
mm-hmm.
know some folks who are just like,
Woo!
because their like scope is so specialized
Mm-hmm,
that they don't
mm-hmm,
actually need a lot of time. The value
mm-hmm.
they bring is higher because it's so specialized.
That's
And
right.
so they're getting paid more for a little less
That's right.
work.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they can take on a little bit more. But
That's right.
3 is like,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, you're good.
And then also having someone, this work can be done remotely. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And, I've talked to nonprofit organizations at times that have said, we need someone on site. We absolutely have to have someone on site. And that's okay. But they have to set their clear boundaries
Mm-hmm.
because a red
Yeah.
flag is we need you in the office 5 days a week. You're like, thank you and goodbye.
Yeah.
You're like 5 days a week. I'm like, I can't do that. I did not set out into this world to do that. Yeah. So those are my red flags.
Awesome. Do you have red flags for your potential clients in terms of who you think of working with or for? So, like the opposite, as a consultant, what are
Well,
some things that organizations do
yeah.
where you're
Well,
like,
okay. Perfect. That's exactly
in-house
it.
as well, or
That's
like
it.
being in office?
I
Yeah.
need you here. I need this person here 5 days a week. And I'm like, then you need something different. I'm going to tell you what it is and I'm going to tell you what it's not. So 5 days a week is like, there are some situations where, hybrid makes sense. Doing deep work for me, I have to be like, if I'm assessing, if I am coming up with, a system for someone, I have to be on my own or I need to be in the office a bit, but I get that. Um, it's generally scope creep. It's generally creeping into essentially trying to get a full-time employee for less money. And, those things are just, they come across so clearly to me in my profession because I can hear them, but they may not be as clear to other people. And so, um, I'm not going to pay more than, $100 an hour. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about that because what you're asking them to do is run your fill in the blank department. I'm not sure you're going to attract the type of consultant or fractional executive that you want if you are giving them well, we're not paying more than that, so they can. I was like, okay, well, then that's not
Or
what you're going to get.
Are you setting someone up to just pad their hours? Like,
That's right.
that's
That's
the
right.
thing, right?
That is
Yeah.
absolutely right. Yeah. And I truly think that, people coming into a situation where they are not asking you to be a thought partner, they're asking you to be a taskmaster, a task
Mhm.
driver.
Mm-mm.
I I I I've sat down enough with, I had a weekly call with an executive where we talked about sort of what his accomplishments were that week and things that he was getting ready for next week. And uh, it became very tasky for me in terms of, you know, chief of staff, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? And I wanted to put down my pen and talk about, like, how did we get here? What you envision. So less assignments, more thought leadership. But listen, I'm out here, folks. I'm out here helping these nonprofits. I'm doing the very best I can. So
Yeah.
I'm doing what I
Yeah.
can.
Amazing. Um, okay, I have one more question, and then we need to wrap up soon. But I love this because you sit
Yeah.
in both seats, and one thing that comes up for fractionals is that organizations will ask for references.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
And that I have no problem with because
uh-huh.
it is not like hiring, but it's also not unreasonable to ask for
Of course.
references.
Of course.
How should consultants think about, or fractionals think about, how to manage if you're potentially, having 3 organizations ask for a reference? I know a lot of them are concerned about going back to clients over and over again, or, so many nonprofits will ask for reference. It's a little easier to ask for references with fractionals than if you're hiring someone in-house, in the sense that in-house you're not, it's like at the very end of the process. And so I think they're a little bit more aggressive with their
Uh-huh,
reference checking
uh-huh,
and wanting to
uh-huh,
hear from more people. And so
uh-huh,
I see a lot of fractionals struggle with this idea of like, well, I'm not a staff, but
uh,
references is something that you use for hiring staff. Is this
uh,
what is this what is this appropriate? But I do think it's reasonable. So if you're
yeah.
giving advice to consultants, fractional consultants, what's like a reasonable line to be like, actually, yeah, the organization is asking for valid information, and maybe what's not reasonable
Yeah.
to share with organizations?
Great question. In our society, in our world, nobody wants to be catfished.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to, you know, use their hard-earned dollars to bring in someone who's not gonna bring value, particularly in a limited amount of time.
And also, can I just add, like, in our sector where there are a lot of bad actors, like there
That's
are a lot of
right.
consultants who do
That's right.
shit.
That's
Yeah.
right. And I don't want your shit to be my shit
Yeah.
because then I gotta hire somebody else to clean that shit. Like, I
Mhm.
just don't need it.
Or it just sits there getting stinky because
That's
we can't
right.
afford to hire someone
Can't
else
afford
to
to hire
clean
it.
it
And so
up.
we're like, you know
Yeah.
what? Now we got to dump it. Or
Yeah.
you ask an A player to take that on, and that A player is like, I'm out of
Ooh.
here. Yeah.
Mm.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
invite you to that one. Yeah. So I love this question because I think references apply in all aspects of life. I don't care if it's
Mhm.
a physician. I don't care if it's a school. I mean, I'm going to ask people, what was your experience, particularly people that I trust? Now, what I explain to nonprofits and I explain to people and clients that are hiring fractionals, and I talk to fractionals about this as well, and I too practice it. You don't have to reach out to people to say every single time, hey, I'm being considered for this, yada, yada. Mm-mm. What I put in my survey after I've completed a role is would you be willing to serve as a testimonial for me? Would you be willing to have conversations with future employers, clients that want to reach out and ask? And if they say yes, then I know that that's an evergreen in my world, right? That's someone who's going to pick up the phone and be like, yep, we had a great time. It was wonderful. Tanya, awesome. But if they say no, then don't worry about it, right? Whatever. But check this out. If you ask ahead of time in terms of, hey, I'm actually trying to get a client, can you call for me? That serves as the pre-reference before you even need one. And that takes some of the pressure off, because if you're reaching out before the engagement is over and saying, hey, if I have another engagement, I'd love to reach out to you. That's perfect. Number two, you can say to that person, I am actively doing this thing as a job. This is what I do for a living. So I would love for you to call two of your friends that run nonprofits and tell them about me.
Mm,
and then
so good.
reference checked, right? Because they're already leading the fight for you for a champion. I I don't necessarily, I do reference checks for executives. If we're going to do checks for executives, we got to do checks for all kinds of stuff. I do reference checks for babysitters. I do reference checks for all kinds of people, not because I think, I just want to know that somebody knows somebody.
Yeah.
I'm not even asking very specific questions. I just want to know, hey, did it save you money? Was it helpful? Would you hire this person again? And if they say, you know what, it wasn't right for us, but I see how they would be really helpful for you because blank, 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 I trust them. References are think of them as testimonials and think of them as referrals rather than references. Think of them as people who are going to go out and hang your banner, so that you don't have to every single time. That's how I tell people to look at it.
So good. And honestly,
Thanks.
like, if they're not formally checking references, they're informally checking references
Of
anyways,
course
right?
they
Like,
are. Even though I
your
tell them all the
reputation.
time, yes, I tell people all the time, stop calling your best friend and being like, hey, girl, tell me. You can do that, but you're also putting your best friend in an awkward spot.
Mm,
Because, so you just be very careful about how you go out and check for those things too. And make sure you have permission from the person. That's it. I have a reference release form and I'm like, hey, I'm going to call them. I'm calling the people you want me to. I know what they're
yeah.
going to say. They're going to be
Yeah.
like, this is awesome. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But I will say, like, your reputation as a consultant is everything, and
That's
how
right.
you go, like, so if you're worried that people won't go to bat for you or won't be a reference, that's
Yeah.
more of a concern.
That's right.
Now, I will say, like, if an organization's like, not really sure we even need a fractional or if this is right, and they're not ready to, like, move forward, but they want to talk to someone or have like,
Sure.
maybe just say, here's some
Here's
informal
someone.
places you can check, or here's some
That's
case
right.
studies and testimonials. And then, as like, if we get further along in this process, I'd be happy to introduce you to a couple of references. Like,
Yeah. I
it's
like
a
that.
manageable problem. Yeah.
I like that approach. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right, Taya, this has been such a good conversation
I'm so
because I feel like,
glad.
yeah, I
Yeah. It's been
always,
fun for me.
yeah, I feel like so often people just hear me say these things. So it's
Oh,
always
no.
nice to have someone else
Yeah.
who's experienced similar, has a similar perspective.
Yeah.
Um, where can our listeners find you online?
I am so glad you asked me that, because so I'm new to podcasting and I asked my guest that yesterday and it felt so good to be able to say, tell me more about where we can find you. Like, I'm a real podcaster, right? For the 15 followers that I have right now, on Spotify. You can find me on, LinkedIn, Tanya Frey, Terra Firma Consulting. And, we help nonprofits recruit, retain, and train. I do have a podcast on Spotify called The Reset. And we talk about what it means to run organizations and the challenges nonprofit leaders have when they are hiring, when they are firing, when they are doing everything in between. So that's where I am living most of these days. So yeah, I put out pod episodes on every other Sunday. right when the Sunday's scaries start to creep in. So right when the Sunday scaries start to creep in, we help you reset for the week.
Oh my goodness. I love that you just said that because I literally, in text message with my friends, I was asking about when I should do, I'm going to be hosting a webinar on
Mm,
like how to replace your nonprofit salary with just 3 clients. And I was like, wow, what time, what day, what time? And one of my friends said, you should do it Sunday because that's when everyone has the Sunday scaries.
that's
So
right. Yeah.
there you go. It's a
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't bump up against my time though. Just kidding. Just teasing. Just teasing. But I'm actually really interested in that webinar and I'd love to share it with people in my networks.
Hmm.
Yeah. So listen, this is, and I'm going to say this not because you invited me to be a guest, but because this is how information gets disseminated. This is how we get better. Um, I'm a firm believer in lifting up women, women of color, lifting up, individuals who are in this space that haven't always had access to some of the things that we sometimes take for granted now because of how much information is out there. There are still people who need to hear what we're saying. We are doing a service for nonprofits around the world trying to make differences. And you provide a platform for individuals to share that information widely. And it's very exciting for me that, what started out as I just want to do good in the world, right? Is turning into something that I am respected for and I am viewed and paid for. And I think that you are shedding light and saying the thing. And so I'm happy to help in any way,
Thank
sort
you.
of keep that conversation going. Yeah, you've grown a great network. I look forward to the Fractional Summit every year. And after the first time I ever even attended, the second year I was a speaker, and I'm like, I'm in. I made
Yeah.
it. So thank you for all you
Oh,
do.
thank you so much. That
Yeah.
truly means the world to me.
Yeah.
I feel like I get to do these things. And when I get feedback like that, I'm like, I'm in the right place. So
Yes. Yes.
thank
I
you.
say the same thing.
Yeah.
Especially when you first, and you know what, we can come back on and talk again, or maybe I'll invite you to mine and we can talk about like getting those clients and keeping those clients and how do you know how to get clients? Because that's what I did the fractional summit conversation on. You don't know what people want. So when people walk in your office, they're not going to on your virtual office, they're not going to say, and I tell people this when in the law, I have a section 206 problem and I need you to help me fix it. No, they're going to be like,
Is
my
that?
CEO is
Yeah.
stuck, right? I don't know what to do. We can't figure out how to raise money. Nobody calls us back, da da da. And so that's where we come in and we are diagnosing the problem. So your first client may not be someone who walks in and says, knock, knock, I'm a client. It may be a friend at dinner who says, oh God, we had this huge, fundraising goal and, capital campaigns are not my thing. And you're like, well, they're not really my thing either, but I know someone that does it. And then you bring that person to them. That's their
Exactly.
first client,
Yeah.
right? So um, I see so much of this being the way
Mm,
that people are getting into this space because people that are listening to your podcast right now are like, okay, yeah, I'm in demand. I need to do this. So go forth,
go do it.
go
Come
do
come
it.
find me. Yeah. Amazing. All right. Thank you so, so much.
Yeah.
And of course, to you, our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Let me know how this episode has helped you because I know it will be incredibly helpful. And definitely reach out to Tanya and let her know how it's helped you. And I'll see you on the next episode. You've been listening to Fracture. Subscribe wherever you're listening and come find me at nonprofitfractionals.com/subscribe for more of this goodness in your inbox every week. Now go build something better.